Meeting with Betty and Pascal. And as usual, it's a pleasure to invite all of you from wherever you're logged in on this call. And we'll be able today, Betty will be able to share something exciting. And personally, I'm looking forward to learning more about the brain support. At times we feel like we are slowing down a little bit. So I'm sure Betty will be able to assist us on this. So welcome so much, Betty, and you can take it away.
Thank you very much, Cynthia. You are much too young to be talking about losing a grip. You still need to have all your marbles. We need them. Welcome, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us once more. As always, it's a pleasure for me to spend this Thursday evening training with you. And I hope that you will find the session beneficial. So from wherever you are joining us, welcome from our rather chilly Pretoria, but with a very joyful and hopeful attitude as we end this month of June. So as Cynthia has indicated, and you would have seen from your invites, my session today is about brain support. And as we all know, the brain is a high-performance organ that is always at work. It is an organ that we treasure very much because it enables us to manipulate our environment and be able to do such a wide variety of things. Interestingly enough, our brains are made 90% of fat. So then our brain works in conjunction with our nervous system as the organ of intellect. So the brain itself is not the intellect, just as the eye is not eyesight. So the eye is our organ of sight, and the brain is the organ that we use for our intellects. And then just to say, what does our brain do? Our brain makes sense of the data that is collected from the environment by our senses. So if you think about our different senses, our ears, eyes, our skin, all these sensors that we have all over our bodies collect data from the environment. This data is relayed to the brain, where the brain is able to make sense of it and respond to it, which means that our brain plays a very essential part in various aspects. So, for example, the brain is going to be helping us in, as I said, manipulating our environment, but also it will help us in solving problems, in retrieving information that we had stored in our memory. And in addition to that, it plays an important role in our personalities. You can imagine how much of our personality resides in our memory of who we are and the choices that we make. The way we express ourselves also is a byproduct of our intellect and therefore our brain. And so whenever we think about the brain, we know that, and maybe we have seen in unfortunate situations, such as when someone starts to like if an older person suffers from Alzheimer's and they start having memory problems, then you can see how much of their personality is actually diminished because of that reduction in their mental abilities. So in effect, just to say that our brain forms an extremely important part of our survival and various other aspects, apart from the instructions that it gives to the different parts of our systems in order for them to work well. Which means that it is very important for us to take care of our brain and to make sure that it will be working in top condition for as long as we can possibly manage it. Just also to add there that mental illness is often stigmatized, and we as distributors should try very much to be prudent and supportive when we are dealing with clients or people within our circle of influence who have any kind of mental illness or some mental issue struggles, because they might already be dealing with the fear of the stigma, and we should therefore be sensitive to that possibility. Then I want to move on to 4 of the major aspects for protecting, promoting, and prolonging our brain health and abilities. We always hear that as we grow older, maybe we lose some of our abilities, and this may be the case, but there are certain ways in which we can stave off the loss of our mental abilities for much longer. And I will mention a number of them. I'll start with the 4 key ones that have been found to definitely play an important role in maintaining our mental abilities. The first one is exercise. Strange as it may seem, exercise plays an important role in keeping our brains sharp by enhancing our blood supply for a certain period of time as we are doing the exercise and even further on. This good blood supply ensures that our brain is well supplied with blood, and therefore with all that is the raw material it needs to function at a high level. Then the second one from exercise is managing our bad cholesterol to make sure that we do not have high bad cholesterol. We may be aware that there are 2 kinds of cholesterol, one which is beneficial and one which, as a result of some of our physiological activities, is considered harmful. So it is important for us to have a healthy cholesterol level in our blood because, of course, cholesterol is useful to our system, for example, in making hormones. And so we do not see cholesterol entirely as just one evil thing. What we need to do is make sure that the harmful type is kept at a minimum and the good type is kept at a normal level. So that is an important factor, which I'll come back to in just a moment. But I want to go to the third aspect of protecting and prolonging our mental abilities, and that is resolving type 2 diabetes. Because the problem to do with doing blood metabolism, I think that someone's, maybe you can mute your phone in case it is not, or your device in case it is not muted, because it's causing an echo. Anyway, so to go on, type 2 diabetes, that is when our sugar metabolism is not working correctly, has been linked to certain kinds of dementia. And for that reason, we should do what we in Neolife know we can do in order to get rid of type 2 diabetes from our lives. In that way, we'll be protecting very many other organs, because I think we have spoken on occasion about the effects of type 2 diabetes, and we know that it is going to affect things like the kidney. It is one of the leading causes of blindness. And of course, again, as I'm saying right now, it is linked to some forms of dementia, that is the loss of our mental abilities. And then the fourth item in my list is good sleep. Again, we will have a topic in future about sleep and the important role it plays. And if you are new, maybe you have not had this particular session. But the important thing in the aspect of the brain and sleep is that since the brain is working hard all of the time when we are awake, it is during deep sleep that the brain detoxifies itself, that is, gets rid of all the toxins that will have been accumulating as a result of our mental activities. And so if we do not get good quality sleep, then our brain never gets that opportunity for detox. And that can be one of the ways in which we find that we are harming our mental abilities as time goes by. Especially in these days, it has become very popular to get very little sleep, either as a result of having very long working hours or working extra hours, or maybe for entertainment and so on, that we tend to not prioritize good sleep. And that means that we may accumulate our sleep deprivation to the extent that we start causing harm. And some of these harms can accumulate so that it will be very difficult to reverse them once the symptoms start showing. So just to revisit the point about high bad cholesterol. So when you have this bad cholesterol in high amounts in the blood, it is harmful to the blood vessels. And this is then the harm to the blood vessels is one of the things that increases the risk of stroke. And stroke is when we have damage to the blood vessels in the brain, and there may be bleeding in the brain, which can cause a certain damage to some of the brain cells. So for that reason, our blood and vascular health, that is the health of our blood and blood vessels, plays a very important role in the health of our brain, because by taking care of the issues to do with cardiovascular health, then we're also taking care of the health of our brain. And so if, for example, you have your doctor or maybe pharmacist has indicated that your cholesterol is on the higher side, the bad cholesterol, because as I said, it's not all cholesterol that is bad. Once you get this diagnosis, it's important to get into our heart and blood health supplements so that you resolve this problem before it leads to something like a stroke or even a heart attack, which I think we mentioned another time. So this, of course, means that we take lifestyle and nutritional steps that is going to normalize our blood and our blood cholesterol. And this can include things like exercise. It can include increasing the amount of vegetables and fruits that we have in our diet. And of course, we should opt for healthy fats and minimize the unhealthy factory fats that I think I've mentioned on several occasions before, because the factory fats contribute to inflammation in the body, and this inflammation can also have adverse effects on our brain as well as other organ systems. Then another point I wanted to bring to you is the problems caused by habitual excessive alcohol use, because this is often seen as just part of recreation and relaxation, but it can be quite detrimental to the brain and mental abilities, both on a short-term basis as well as on a long-term basis. Some of the damage that comes as a result of this is hard to repair even after we stop the habitual excessive alcohol use. So it can be long-term damage that will be quite difficult to reverse. And so one should be cautious about the use of alcohol. Occasional and reasonable amounts may not cause much damage, but also to remember that women are more susceptible to the damage than men are, and that alcoholism also has got a genetic factor in it, which means that the use of alcohol for some people can quickly lead to addiction, while for others it may not. So these are things that one needs to be aware of. But as I think I've also said before, the fact that you have got a genetic predisposition does not mean that it has to happen. It just means that you need to be aware so that you are cautious about things that can lead to serious problems. In addition to the direct effect of excessive alcohol use, there's also the indirect effects. So, for example, drunkenness can lead to falls and head injuries, and it can also lead to lack of self-care, which can end in malnutrition. And in fact, people who excessively use alcohol tend to have deficient amounts of vitamin B in their bodies. So this is, again, another factor to take into account. And then I think I've mentioned diabetes as a risk factor for certain types of dementia. Here we can include Alzheimer's disease, as well as a kind of dementia that comes as a result of having small strokes in the brain. The stroke may be small, but the cumulative effect of small repeated strokes can actually lead to progressive loss of mental abilities. And the thing is, the problem with strokes is that once you have one stroke, it increases the chances of having another one. So that is why it is important for us to resolve diabetes, because apart from the fact that it has been linked to Alzheimer's disease, it is also linked to damage in the high sugar in the blood is linked to damage of blood vessels. So the sugar itself damages blood vessels. And when the blood vessels in the brain are damaged, then of course it means that the blood supply to the brain is going to be reduced. And this can, of course, then cause the brain cells to die, to starve to death, because they rely on the blood to bring them energy. And in fact, our brains are our biggest energy users. 20% of the energy used in our bodies is actually used just by our brain. So you can imagine what a big output of energy thing it is if the blood supply is blocked or interfered with, because then the cells would be damaged or die, and then the part of the brain, the part of the body that the brain was supplying with those cells, or the activity that that part of the brain was responsible for, is going to suffer. And that is why we see when someone suffers a stroke, they are going to have problems, for example, in movement or speech or sight. And that is because the cells in that part of the brain will have been damaged either by the leakage of blood from the blood vessels, or from the lack of a blood supply. Then the next thing, so as we know, before I move on, as we know with diabetes, we have got excellent products to help with the resolving diabetes, type 2 diabetes. And if we use this product as well as using the lifestyle changes that supports good blood sugar metabolism, then we can resolve diabetes so that it's no longer a part of our lives. And those products are Botanical Balance, 3NN, and fiber tablets, or the multi-fiber blend. Then moving on to the next point I have here is the importance during pregnancy for expectant mothers to include omega-3 salmon oil, vitamin B complex, and multimineral as their baseline supplementation to support the development of the fetal brain, the brain of the growing baby. So always, if we have expectant mothers in our circle of influence, our families, or amongst our distributors, then it's good to make them aware of the importance of these 3 supplements, especially to do with the development of the fetal brain, of course, with other things as well. But since today we are speaking about the brain, then we need to know that we need to start supporting the development of a healthy brain from when the mothers are expecting. And remember that our size as creatures is small compared to the size of our brain. So the brain is a very big organ in us, considering our size. And that is because our brains are very, very important in our survival and in our day-to-day activities. So just to know that expectant moms should keep that in mind. Then the point about exercise, that again, regular exercise, and it does not have to be something and leaves you feeling invigorated is important for mental sharpness. So why is that? It is because such exercises increase the rate of blood circulation in the body and therefore in the brain. It also improves our sleep, because remember just now I say that sleep is very important for our brain health, because it is during the deep sleep cycle that we actually detox our brain to make sure that harmful things will not accumulate in our brain and reduce its sharpness. Then vigorous exercise of this type will also improve our mood, which is also part of our minds. And then we know that exercise also helps to reduce our stress by dissipating stress hormones so that they do not harm us when they accumulate and stay in our systems. It also helps to alleviate anxiety and depression. Okay, then and other ways in which, so those were the four main ones that I want to touch on. And then going on to say other things that will be helpful is to be always learning. And of course, we are doing that now, but in other aspects, it's always important to keep our brains challenged with learning new tasks, new skills, new types of movement. So for example, if you used to dance when you are young, but now that you're older, you no longer do so, you can revisit that. We can learn a new language, we can learn a certain craft. All these types of things challenge our brain and what this does. And I want to thank our excellent distributor in Tanzania, Sister Claire, who sent me a very nice video about this. I always appreciate this kind of feedback from you distributors. So she sent me a very nice video about keeping our brains sharp. And one of the things that was mentioned there was the importance of ongoing learning of new skills and new abilities, so that our brain is made aware that it has to provide us with the ability to learn new things. Because as you grow older, for example, like myself, as you head to be afraid to try new things, or you may feel that there's no longer any point to learn new things. As I sometimes feel when we have all this new technology coming, maybe 1 month, 2 months, there's a new thing. We might start feeling like we don't want to learn new things, or we are not confident in learning new things. But it's something we should resist. We should try to every so often find new things to learn. It's going to help our brain be challenged, and our brain then tends to rise to that challenge. Then the other that I want to speak about is the importance of the health of our gut to the health of our brain. So research is showing that there is a very close connection between our gut, that is our digestive system, and our brain. And in fact, when you've heard people speak about having a gut feeling, or that a person has got guts, whereas we are speaking about the courage of their character. All this is now being found to be true because there's actually a very close link between our digestive system and our brain, which means that if our gut health is poor, then it could have on our brain. And you may have noticed, for example, if you're going through a very stressful time that is causing your use, let's say, certain problems with the gut, then you may find that your mental sharpness is also affected. And more especially when we speak about the friendly microbes that live in our guts, they live in what we call symbiosis, which means that they are our friends whose activities help us. They are not like the pathogenic microbes that cause us harm and disease. This is a different group of microbes with which we have evolved. So they are our friends, and their activities actually contribute to heightening our immune system. They not in a harmful way, but in a healthful way. And it is also being found that when we've got a healthy gut microbiome, that we've got a healthy wide variety of gut microbes, it helps us, our minds, to deal better with stress. And it also helps our immune system to protect us better. So our gut health, it turns out, is an important contributor to the health of our brain, or the loss of our mental abilities. Of course, also, if we are eating an unhealthy diet, it's going to harm many organ systems in our bodies, because, for instance, we may have certain food additives, chemicals that are added to food, processed food, I mean to say, and these can trigger reactions that can cause inflammation in our gut and even in our other systems, and this can lead to problems to do with our gut health, with our brain health. The same thing applies to the factory oils that I already mentioned. So then the next point to mention is that if a person shows signs of mental or mood disorders, it is a good thing to visit a doctor. So that is an important recommendation. And if possible, to see the doctor more than once, or to get a second opinion, so as to get an accurate diagnosis and medication. Unfortunately, in mental problems, prevention is better than cure, because most of the available medications for most of the mental illness are problematic when they're used in the long term. A lot of times the dose has to be progressively increased as they become less effective. So it is here again, prevention is very much better than cure. Then turning our attention to our new life products that are going to be helpful. We have omega-3 salmon oil, which I have already mentioned in terms of expectant month, but for adults as well, and for young growing people. It is made of the edible parts of the fish, salmon fish that is caught in the unpolluted waters of the North Atlantic. These oils help to fight inflammation, and this helps to keep our brains sharp. Then we have a herbal preparation that is called Mind Enhancement Complex. This preparation supports various aspects of our brain's function and brain activities, and this helps to, it will then help to improve functions like protecting our recall, that is being able to retrieve information that is in our memory, as well as in our mental sharpness, in problem solving, and so on. Then next we have coenzyme Q10, which helps in cleaning up harmful byproducts in our brain. Remember, I said good sleep helps with this. Coenzyme Q10 will then also assist, and this will ensure that our brain is in optimum condition, because there will not be accumulated toxins contributing to loss of our mental abilities. Next, we have vitamin B complex, which also plays a very important role in the supply of energy. Remember, I've said our brains are the biggest consumer of energy in our body, and vitamin B is important in energy production as well as in mood elevation. So it helps us to, when our mood is elevated, we are more able to see how to solve problems, and we are able to see opportunities. When we are depressed and laid low by stress, we may find that we don't easily find solution to problem, and we tend to find that our brains are moving slowly and our bodies are also lethargic. So vitamin B complex plays an important role. So those first four, and then we can go on to add others like multimineral or CalMag, because these mineral preparations work together to help our minds to relax, and this will help us to sleep better. So this is multimineral. It can also be CalMag. Remember, multimineral does contain calmaganates, but we now have also magnesium, which is a standalone supplement, and magnesium is especially useful also for improving relaxation and sleep. Then vitamin E, as well as wheat germ oil, are two other supplements that are important as antioxidants for protecting our brains from oxidative stress. That is the byproducts of the brain's activities. So those can also be added. And then we also have vitamin D, which we may need to supplement. It helps to protect the nerve cells themselves. So if you are a person who spends a lot of time indoors, or you are a darker skinned person living in a temperate climate, then you might consider supplementing vitamin D, especially in the winter months, such as we are having here in Southern Africa now. And then the two final ones I can add there is flavonoid complex, another important antioxidant for the brain, and acidophilus plus, which if you have it in your market is an important addition for improving our gut microbiome, increasing its population. Remember, these gut microbes rely on fiber to survive, so we need to ensure that our diet contains plenty of healthy fibers, both soluble and otherwise. So this would be food such as leafy greens and vegetables, legumes like beans and peas, and so on. So these ones are going to be useful in feeding our friendly microbes. So apart from taking acidophilus, we should also consider that we need to have fiber either as a supplement or from our diets. If you do not have acidophilus in your market, I always recommend that you include the fermented foods from your culture in your diet, as well as fiber, because then it's another way of, not as easy as acidophilus, of course, but it's another way of increasing the variety and the numbers of the friendly microbes that support us in our gut. So those are some of the supplements that we can recommend for a healthy brain. Of course, I do not mean that we need to take, I think I gave something like 8 to 10 supplements, but I would say that the first 4 that I mentioned would be the core. And in addition to that, you can check what else, depending on your client or your own budget, what you can add to your list. I can look at a few questions, but most of the questions we'll do in our Q&A session, which will be in the month when we are having recognition, the week that we're having recognition. So I see that someone has got their hand up. As I said, it's not possible for me to respond during the session itself. So if you have a question, please, you can either add it in the chat or you can send it directly to me in my number. So I wanted to just mention one out of a number of questions about brain supports. So the one I picked here is Alzheimer's disease, possibly because I mentioned it a number of times this evening. So this is a type of damage that occurs to our nerve cells that leads to this disease. And this damage to the nerve cells causes the destruction of our memory and other mental functions. So it is often associated with older people as we age, but there can also be an Alzheimer's that comes from around the age of 40, which is actually quite a sad thing. But what we can do is, of course, the points that we have raised about protecting our brains and supporting its activities. And remember that by the time we are seeing these symptoms of Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, already a lot of damage has taken place. So that is why I say that in terms of brain support, we need to start early, not to wait until we see symptoms, because by then the damage would have been quite ingrained into our nervous system. So the meant for Alzheimer's is mind enhancement complex, coenzyme Q10, omega-3 salmon oil, flavonoid complex, and magnesium complex. So another thing to note is if a person should also have their blood sugar checked so that they find out if there is an aspect of pre-diabetes or diabetes. And if the test finds out that there is a problem with their sugar metabolism, then to that we should add botanical balance and TRINN. So I see that it's time for me to bid you a good evening, but not before thanking you very much for your time and your attention. I trust that the session